Hey guys, it's Roland with Borealis Bushcraft. Had a request this morning from a new subscriber to do on one of my tracker videos he wanted me to do a video on how to sharpen a Tom Brown tracker, or a tracker style knife, so we'll go with that. So to answer a few questions right off the hop, there is multiple different ways that you can sharpen this style of knife. So this is my Tops T1. Okay, it's been reprofiled and ground differently, so I've explained that in a earlier video. This thing is a tank. Now, when I reground this, I purposely made this, I basically merged Tops's flat grind into a convex. There's a few reasons for that. One, on this primary chopping edge here, this is going to take a lot of abuse. Okay? So that is something to take into consideration when you're working with this style of knife. So hopefully the lighting's not too bad. Kind of in my dungeon here in the basement. But yeah. The second draw knife portion here on this knife, I also did in a convex. Okay? For basically the same reasons. So this blade has seen lots of field time. Okay? With all the different variations on these knives that are out there and available, it basically all comes down to personal preference. So I've made my own version of this years and years ago. A buddy of mine has it. He's doing a sheath for it. But yeah, the overall design of the knife is quite good. Okay. Now there's people that love the tracker, people that hate the tracker. Okay, here's the thing. Knives cut stuff, guys. Personal preference. That's it. You don't have to. It's not some mystical, magical, blade. So a lot of the problems that people find when they try and sharpen this knife is in the quarter round section. Okay. It's basically this little hook portion. Okay, on some of the Tops they're not as pronounced. This one's been reground, as I've said. I'll give you a comparison with my Red Scorpion 6 Raven. The Raven has even more pronounced quarter rounder. This, in my opinion, is probably the closest thing commercially, or was commercially available. This is kind of a unicorn right now. They stopped making these years ago. I'll do a video on this knife another day. But it's the closest thing to the original Beck pattern of the WSK. So the grinds do actually have a lot of use. When you hold the two of these side by side, it's a night and day difference. Okay, the handle's longer, the handle's more pronounced, more scalloped. Personally, I really like it. The Tops, it's comfy, but yeah. So anyway, back to sharpening. So basically, when I'm in the dungeon or whatever, there's a few different methods that I'll use to sharpen this knife. Primarily, most of my edge bevels are going to be either convex or micro convex for strength. Okay, so I don't know if anybody's ever held or seen a raven, but the primary bevels are actually hollow ground. So probably a couple reasons that they did this, because it was mass produced. This one is number 27 out of 500. Okay, so it's very, very, very low in the production scale. That's first generation raven. Hollow grinding by machine is actually easier to produce bevels than it is to do a convex. Convex grinding is typically all done freehand. Flat grinding to get this bevel to blend in is a nightmare. That's why a lot of people, and I think Mike Stewart calls it the nightmare grind, and he is absolutely right. I've made these, and this portion to get proportional sucks. However, to improve the edge strength on this, I went to a micro convex. I got this knife used. It actually has a couple little ripples in the very, very edge of the blade. It does not bother me at all. It doesn't impede performance or anything like that. So, basically what I have for when I'm doing my primary chopping edge, this portion here, okay, is just a sheet of wood. Okay, it's raised up on a block. I've cut some Ranger bands, which for anybody that doesn't know what those are, it's just bicycle inner tubes sliced into rings. And there is some foam padding underneath. And what that does is it allows me to not worry so much about angles, and that's what produces that convex edge. So, try and do this. So basically, when you're going to start to sharpen your, actually, you know what, I'll do it on the tops. You're basically going to get your tops, because that's what the video was on, right? Stops Tom Brown. And you're going to tip your knife, depending on whether you have flat crown bevels or, you know, whatever, convex, it don't really matter. You can do the same sort of technique with just a regular flat. This is an extra coarse diamond stone. Doesn't have to be extra coarse, it can be whatever grits you want. So basically you lay your blade flat and you tip it up until your edge starts to make contact. And the nice part about sandpaper, a lot of guys will use a mouse pad. I just got some dense closed cell foam. Is you're not concerned about keeping that angle perfect. You can judge it a lot of times by feel. This piece of sandpaper is a little on the worn side, but seeing as how this is more for demonstration purposes, this will suffice. Okay. And basically you're polishing that edge. Okay. Now you'll do that until the opposite side you feel a slight burr. Okay. Once you feel that burr, you're going to want to flip the knife over and repeat for the opposite side. Alright. And you're just going to continue this process. This is for primary chopping edge on the tracker until you raise a burr on the opposite side again. So obviously I'm polishing the underside. I want my burr now to be on the top edge here. Once you've achieved a burr to both sides, now you can start going back and forth. Okay. A lot of guys get too concerned and they'll count the number of strokes and they'll it'll just go into a scientific nightmare. You just kind of do it by feel. That's why I like to produce a burr on both sides, because then it tells me that my edge, for all intents purposes, might not be entirely perfectly centered with the blade, but now I have a working edge that I can polish. Okay, and let's face it, with a knife that's of this design, this is not a scalpel. You can make it razor sharp, but this is designed for heavy bush use, and this knife is also never really intended to be kind of the one tool option, right? I've said in other videos it's a jack of all trades, kind of a master of none, kind of a generic phrase, I guess. So basically we polish that up. Right now I'm using 400 grit sandpaper, just a wet dry. You can go all the way through the different grits doing it this way, and you just strap them down as you go and you can polish your edge. It's not a huge issue. I find the 400 grit for most applications leaves a very, very workable edge. Sharp enough for wood's use and skinning game and general cutting tasks. And I am applying a little bit of pressure. I'm not a ton. And you kind of want to be relatively consistent going back and forth, but it's not an overall priority. Sometimes guys will have an issue sharpening convex blades with sandpaper and they end up dulling their edge. Typically what happens is as you're going back and forth, they're changing the angle too steep, and then they end up pulling their edge back. So you have to pay a little bit of attention to the angle on your wrist as your blade's contacting. So this is kind of going to be really, really tough for you guys to see on camera. But as you're going back and forth, the blade is staying relatively on the same plane. The degree of that angle really doesn't matter, as long as you're holding a fairly consistent position. This is really tough to do freehand. Anyway, okay. So that's how you take care of your primary chopping bevel. Okay, now on the draw knife portion, you can repeat the same process with the sandpaper and mouse pad. Obviously you have to have a piece that's that distance apart, otherwise you'll just hack it up. So a lot of times what I'll do is have a field sharpener that's leather strop on one side, and it's got a little piece of that mouse pad type foam on that side. What I'll do is I'll take my tracker, and it fits in there with a little bit of room to move, and then I can do the inside this way. Okay, it's exact same process as doing your primary chopping bevel. Now, the part that everybody has, or not everybody, has issue with is doing that quarter round, that tiny section. Some guys can get it crazy sharp, some guys can't. It's a hard section of the knife to sharpen. So, there's a couple tools you can use to do that, because it's such a fine. The round ceramic on the Work Sharp field sharpener works really, really good. Oh, doggy's in the way here. So that literally just gets right in there. And the same principle. You can work it in a circle, you can work it back and forth. Doesn't really, really matter, okay? You could even, this portion of the knife is not, this is more flat ground in here. Just due to the nature, it's really hard to make a convex unit to go in that groove. So I typically just use either the ceramic for if I'm just tuning it and honing it. The other thing that works really, really well is one of the oval diamond knife steels for like kitchen knives. As you can see, it's not flat. It's got an oval to it. And the reason for that is that you can get on there and you can draw it back and forth. And your same principle applies. You're looking for that little bit of a raised burr. And the angle in here will depend on how your knife was ground. Just that little bit of motion on the diamond produced that little burr. Okay? And then when you go back, it's the same principle. This section of the knife, guys, does not go dull that quick. It's kind of protected in a way, being in that little crevice. They do make shorter versions of this this diamond rod. And you can just kind of touch that up right in that corner. So when you see guys on video making these really, really, really beautiful curls and feather sticks, this is the portion of the knife that they're using. Most likely. Oops, a bit of slippage. That's shaving sharp in there right now. Okay, so now, as I said, field sharpener, you can use it to hone that little portion of that hook. Right? Notice how I'm holding the knife and moving the knife and I'm not moving the sharpener. There are sometimes people that'll do the exact opposite. They'll hold the knife still and then they'll move the sharpener. Comes to the same thing. It's all personal preference. Whatever you feel more comfortable with. Right? The nice part I like about the work sharp is the fact that when it comes time to do that in the field, I've got lots of room to play with. Okay. Now, to hone in the field, I got just a pill bottle, which usually what I'll do is I'll store extra sandpaper in the roll, just in the tube. The pill bottle, on the outside, I have a self-adhesive. I bought this stuff at Lee Valley. It's for sharpening woodworking tools, chisels, and that kind of thing. It sticks on. It comes in different grits. This is, I think, is a, I don't know, like 15,000 micron. I don't remember. I don't even remember. It's been so long ago. But I'll do the same concept. I'll use this in that little groove and just rub it back and forth and polish the inside of that. This is probably going to have to be a two-part video, guys, because I'm already coming up on 20 minutes. I don't remember exactly how long my iPhone records for. I haven't made a video in a long time. So that gives me the ability to hone that little corner. Oh yeah, razor sharp. Love it. Okay. You can also apply this stuff to any surface. You can put it on right onto the mouse pad if you want, or whatever you want to. Then your final step is to typically strop. So if you notice on the edges of my strop, they're kind of chewed up. Well, that's from doing this. I haven't bothered to make an oval or round strop yet. I don't know why. So basically you just strop that corner. You just use the very, very edge and come back on it. And you can do this at the end after you've done your primary sharpening and polishing to all your other bevels. Alright, so you can come back in here. And here you're applying a fair bit of pressure. The other benefit with the convex edges is you don't, when you're stropping, you don't have to pay so much attention. You can apply some pressure. So when you strop, you're only going in one direction. You're pulling away from the cutting edge. Yeah, and that gives you a really nice produced edge. When I check for nicks, I typically use my fingernail, and I'll just run my fingernail over, and you can actually feel where you've got like a few little microchips or something, or where you have edge damage. Not damage, but where it's not consistent. Okay, so I'm going to stop this one, and we'll start another one so that I don't just get cut off mid-sentence, and we'll go over some other stuff.